Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the Ron Cook Hub. There might just be somebody in the audience who's called Ron Cook, I don't know about that. But he might introduce himself to you later on. And welcome to York's greatest invention since the Kit Kat, the York Festival of Ideas. My name is Jonathan Ruffer, late of BBC Radio York, these days of a smaller broadcasting organisation called YO1 Radio. So, to begin at the beginning, Jonathan Ruffer, the gentleman to my right, grew up in North Yorkshire. He read English at Cambridge and qualified as a stockbroker and barrister before moving into private client investment management in 1980 with Dunbar Fund Managers. Formerly Chief Investment Officer of Rathbone Brothers plc, he established Ruffer Investment Management Limited in 1994, which transferred its investment business to Ruffer LLP in 2004, of which he remains the chair. Now the bit that you're most interested in. In 2012, Jonathan purchased Jacob and his 12 sons, a sequence of extraordinary paintings by the Spanish master Francisco de Zurbaran, as well as the 900-year-old Auckland Castle in Bishop Auckland, where those paintings have been housed for more than 250 years. Determined to keep the paintings for the people of the North East and to allow access to the castle, which had previously served as the private residence, the palace of the Prince Bishops of Durham, he saw in their acquisition a way to help reinvigorate the region and bring about real change, and establish something called the Auckland Castle Trust. The charity, now known as the Auckland Project, is working to transform Auckland Castle into an arts, faith and heritage destination of international significance. This includes the restoration of the castle itself, as well as reimagining the 17th century walled garden, where there was a gardener yesterday by the name of Rishi Sunak, and the development of might be a future career, who knows? And the development of a diverse and multi-site museum, Winchester Roman Fort and the Weardale Railway, not forgetting the Mining Art Gallery and the tremendous Spanish Gallery. The Auckland Project sister charity, 11 Arches, is responsible for the open-air spectacular The Kinrin, an epic tale of England. So there we are, that's the brief biog. If you go to Bishop Auckland, as I did yesterday, make sure you book a table for lunch or dinner at the excellent tapas restaurant called El Castillo, which is right beside the Spanish Gallery. And while you're in the restaurant, eating their fantastic food, and I'm not just saying that, you might be lucky enough to meet a wonderful member of their team. The woman in question is called Charlotte. If you ask Charlotte what difference the Auckland Project has made to the town, she will come over all misty-eyed and then tell you with great enthusiasm what she told me yesterday. It's amazing, she said. It has transformed the town. Let us meet our guest this afternoon, the man who has made that transformation possible. Our investment expert, qualified barrister, arts lover, castle owner, and possibly one of the nation's greatest philanthropists. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Jonathan Ruffer.
Can I say I pay Charlotte £5 a month?
It's £5 well spent. I mean that. She just lit up when I said, what difference has it made? So you've dropped your wallet. To start off with, please, Jonathan, would you please just tell me something about your early life? How did you grow up? Did you grow up in a privileged background?
I think I describe it as a genteel, not exactly poverty, but definitely not more than that. My dad was a Royal Marine, and when he was young, he used to regale me on how he'd had a helping hand in the sinking of the Bismarck. And he lived to be 98, and I discovered by the time he was 98 that he'd sunk Bismarck single-handedly.
Good man. Good man.
And when he retired, he set up a travel agency, and he never spotted that Ruffer Travel is not a good name.
Did he have people signing up under a misapprehension?
Well, I think some people booked through him just because they were intrigued.
Were you, I'm sorry, there's this dreadful terminology, not of my invention, an army brat. Were you moved from place to place during your childhood?
He retired when I was about 2, so but that was his life. He knew how to wear a bowler hat, which I never did.
Well, working in the city, maybe you should have done. Was philanthropy a family tradition? Were you a family that gave and that thought about other people in society?
Well, I don't know if it's me. I think philanthropy is a simply awful word. I think it's what Mexican presidents do when they are trying to garner votes. They call themselves philanthropists. So I call it a do-gooding, which seems to me to be much more straight down the wicket. And it has that element of darkness in it, which I think any attempt to do the right thing, it's quite an ambivalent thing to be doing. Philanthropy is just plain dark.
I don't see you as ambivalent in any way in what you've done, but I wish I could press the exchange all on my keypad now on my computer and switch the word philanthropy for do-gooding, but I can't, it's too late. You went to Cambridge, what sort of experience was that?
So that was a great time. It took me most of my school days to realise that I wasn't a clever plod. And my headmaster, who had to write the report on my character, didn't like me very much. And he wrote a narrative of a practical joke that I played on the school CCF. And this absolutely delighted the college to which I applied, and they invited me to join. And my teacher said on my first dinner that had it been left to academic prowess, I would probably have not made it.
Ladies and gentlemen, do we want to know what the practical joke was? Because I will go away and fester about it if I don't ask you. What did you do?
It's funny, I've always thought of myself as a regular guy, but when I look back on my life, I'm actually, there's something pretty bonkers about me, really. And
you bought a castle,
Yes, no, that's pretty much high up on the list of it. But we were sent to this was a boarding school, and there was a set 36-hour period in Salisbury Plain when the Army cadets fought the Royal Air Force cadets, and we were told 2 things. One was to be nice to the real soldiers if we met them, and the other thing was not to touch any bits of metal because they might be an unexploded bomb. So I dressed up as and claimed to be a bomb disposal expert and moved the place where we were meant to be camping. I said it was an unexploded bomb there, and I had a marvellous time.
Well, they got you into Cambridge by the sound of it.
The best moment was when I got to inspect my troops, and there was the gap as to where I should have been standing. So I was inspecting myself, which is something which I'm sure we ought to do more of.
Have you continued as a practical joker through your life?
I haven't the energy really, but I did do it recently.
What, as well as being a practical joker, as a child, what were you going to be? Had you made a decision?
Quite early on, I wanted to be a stockbroker, and I worked for a stockbroking firm, and the senior partner asked me what I liked about stockbroking, and I said the idea of getting something for nothing, which was extraordinarily close to the essence of what it is. But I think, age 16, that was probably a bit too precocious.
Have you remained as transparent and honest in your life?
I think you have to tell me.
Right, we will do. What happened after university? What did you read? Sorry, what did you read?
I read English.
Right.
I discovered, slightly to my chagrin, that all the jobs I tried I wasn't any good at. So every year or 18 months I'd give it up and try something else. And what that meant was that I was extremely good at dinner parties, because whatever profession was mentioned, I could say, oh yes, I've been one of those. But it was only really in my late 20s when I came back to investment that I discovered that actually this was something that I was made for. my great thing, what do I want for people, particularly young people, is I want people to become who they're made to be. And I think it's knowing all those things that I've done, which wasn't me, and then finding something that was. And it's like that film, The Wizard of Oz, which is mostly in black and white, but every now and again bursts into colour. And that's what I feel our lives should be.
I think for many of us here, and so we're just slightly sidetracked here, for many of us here, investment is a notion perhaps beyond many of our experiences. Some people may hold some stocks and shares, some people may have an ISA or a savings account or something like that. Can you summarise the world of investment? Because I think most of us tend to think investment is something for the super rich, or for those people who've got a finely tuned sense of what's happening in markets and with businesses and things like that. Is that true, or is that where you come in and help us?
Maybe never asked for that. I have no idea how I would describe what I do. Apologise, I think, probably is the most highly toned part of the job, really. Because the job is foretelling the future, and we have a design fault. We don't know what the future holds. And so most of the investment world is like 6-year-olds playing football. Wherever the football is, you have 22 children chasing you and yelling and banging one another on the head. And I've always found that actually, if you change the metaphor to a hound a beagle chasing a hare, the best thing is to work out where the hare will be and not take very much notice of where it is. So I think that would be the single thing I'd say that's made me effective at it.
I think you've just put the fear of God into anybody in this room who does have any investments. The image of children, 6-year-olds, rushing after them. Yes, club rules, folks, club rules. He didn't say that. So let's just move on. It is no secret that your undoubted business skills, your business acumen, has made you a very wealthy man. Certainly the wealthiest man I've ever spoken to in my life. But at some stage in your life, you decided that you wanted to share that wealth. What happened?
Well, it was a conscious decision, and it was born out of weakness, not out of strength. I'm very gaudy. And one of the chilling things that rich people hate is the story of the rich young ruler, because basically Christ goes up to him and says, I gather you're a goody two-shoes, and the chap grins from ear to ear and explains all the wonderful things that he does, and Jesus is very taken with him and says, wow, if you want to follow me, sell everything and follow me. Now, I don't think that that is a command to everybody who has a lot of money. But I think if you have a lot of money and you can't handle it, then it is a command to you. And we'd had the big crash in 2008-9, and we had seen it coming. And when the market was down 30%, we were up 20% or something. And what happened was that our business, which was thriving and doing very well, suddenly grew into something really very big. And the way things are in the city is it's winner take all. So there are lots of people who scrabble to earn a living. There are comparatively few people who are comfortable, but then there are a whole lot of people at the top of the tree who end up very rich. And I wasn't at that point very rich, but I could see that's where I was heading, and I wasn't at all sure that it would do me any good. So I committed not to sharing it, but to giving it away. And so, when I look at myself now, I have very little wealth. I'm very comfortably off, and I can eat a Mars bar or two without wondering where the next pennies come from. But basically, I live without money, and that seems to me to be a marvellously freeing thing, and that's how I live my life. But then the question is, what how do you give away your money? You can think, gosh, the York Festival idea, that seems like the sort of thing I'd like to support. But I waited for instructions, and the instructions came about a year later, which was ditch the firm you're in, leave that to the people who are in it now, and it's time to work with the poor, which I didn't like the word poor, really the dispossessed, those without a voice, up in the northeast where I came from. I was brought up in Stokesley. And that was great, but I didn't know what that meant when I was at home. Northumberland has a character, Yorkshire has a character, but County Durham really had lost the sense of who it was. So it was always likely to be in County Durham. And I had a sort of rather romantic idea of being the patron saint of the soup lady, the community foundation, where I stand there dishing out soup and being lovely and all that sort of thing. And I met a terrifying woman who I didn't know, and she didn't know me, and I told her this. And her eyes narrowed, and she said, what qualities do you bring to this? And I thought, and I said, well, I've got a nice smile. And she looked at me with withering contempt. She said, you think your nice smile is going to get people off drugs, do you? And I thought, wow, that's rather a good question. So the soup kitchen became a plan A, and it was time for plan B.
You said a moment ago, and I don't want to let it go. You said
hello?
It was all.
We can hear you loud and clear. We can't hear Mr. Ruffer.
I'm terribly sorry about that. I don't
His
know whether
microphone is dead or he's not talking into it.
Oh, right.
Oh,
It was turned on. I could hear it, but maybe.
if I say, well, hello, is that sort of loud enough to have it?
Yes.
Jonathan, if I just suggest that if we maybe move that to this side.
Can I just say you've done well not to hear me.
You're going to be able to watch it all back.
Right.
Oh dear God.
I should have understood it.
No, I'm going to move it to there, like that, because you're turning a lot of the time to look at me.
Right.
There we are.
Is that better for you?
Jolly good. You said a moment or two ago, instruction came from God.
Yeah. Well, is there a question in there?
Yeah. Was that instruction from God? Do you believe you were instructed by God to do what you did?
I'll tell you how it happened. I went for a sort of spiritual wash and brush up in one of these seminaries in Wales. I'd never been to one before, but I went for an 8-day silent retreat. You probably worked out that actually I can't stop talking, so that was quite a problem. But what happened in it was that we would be talked to by the priests and the monastic staff early in the morning, and Father is so-and-so had a funny turn and been taken to hospital, and Maria, who worked in the kitchens, had also had a funny turn, and she'd been taken to hospital. And we kept getting regular bulletins on how Father O so-and-so was doing, but not a dicky bird about Maria, because she was just working in the kitchens, and that wasn't worth a bulletin. And I remember getting terribly cross about this, and sort of shaking my fist and saying, who will look after the little man? And I got a message back which basically said, that is a dangerous question to ask. And so that was the moment when I realised that my life was going to change.
Why did you choose Bishop Auckland as the centre for your, and I'm going to substitute the word that you use, do-gooding, for the word philanthropy, which is the one that I've written down.
Okay.
Why Bishop Auckland?
Well, I trundled drearily around a number of places, Hartlepool, and they're all these post-industrial towns are pretty miserable. But the church commissioners were trying to sell the pictures that you mentioned, a group of Spanish Old Masters by Zurbaran, which had been in the castle since the 1750s. And they're really important pictures, and I've always been interested in art from that period, so I knew that they were there. And part of my feeling exercise was I was absolutely sure that if they were in Salisbury or Guildford or somewhere like that, the church commissioners would never have dreamt of tearing these valuable pictures out, sending them off to Christie's or Sotheby's, and just thinking that they'd get away with it. So I used that as the campaign. And the thing which changed the flavour of it was that my idea had been simply to buy the pictures, which is quite a clean action, and then say, look, I'm committing to Bishop Auckland. I don't know what I'm going to do, but this is an earnest that I want to be alongside you, I want to be part of the community, and together we can work out what to do. And I was persuaded by those who like name drops. It was by Neil McGregor, who runs the British Museum. He said, look, if you are serious in working in the long term in a new place that you've never been to before, you've got to own the built infrastructure. And of course he was right. But what it did, it meant that one took on, a classic, mouldering, it used to be called Auckland Castle, but it's the Bishop's Palace. This is a palace, quite a small palace, but it has 8 formal gardens, it has a deer park, it has the biggest private chapel in Europe. And these are absolute money pits. I call it the Belle Dame sans merci. Just a fat old lady who gobbles up resource. But if you take it on, that's what you commit to. So that was the moment that the stakes were raised.
I've heard Neil McGregor speak, and he's a very persuasive man, but anybody that can say to you, look, if you want the paintings, you have to buy the castle that they come with, is quite an act of persuasion.
Well, I'm quite a good negotiator.
I believe
and the pictures were 15 million, and the castle was 3 million, which was reduced to 1.7 million, and I walked away and I got it for -4 million.
Would you like to come to me with the same? How did you do that?
Well, the answer was it was worth -8.
And how much have you spent on it since you
I just don't look. I just don't know.
Just put the bill down there.
Yes.
Somebody else can.
In fact, it's one of the things that I'm really pleased about. I'm quite often asked, how much have you spent in doing all this? And the truth is, I haven't a clue. And even when I sort of try and work it out, because I don't really keep account of these things, I just haven't got a clue. And it's a lot of money, but I don't secretly think it's X, but I'm not going to tell you.
One thing having the castle, which is absolutely splendid, as I say, I was there yesterday. It's still undergoing
Palace,
renovation and repairs, which is where the Bishop of Durham still has an office.
Yes, we kept him there. Sorry, that's what.
What a scary line.
Scrub that line in the recording. They've been there since the 11th century, and I thought that if that thread was broken, it could never be restored. So by keeping them working in one part of it, I felt that means that almost whatever happens, as long as that remains the case, then the connection with the bishopric remains intact. So that was I
And
did that.
for those who've never been, and I'm sure quite a lot of you here have been to the palace, it is an extraordinary experience because as you walk round, not only are the Zurbarans and the other art in there as well, but room after room is dedicated to and linked to a particular bishop. So it's the story of bishops from, I don't know, the 17th or 18th century, all the way through to very recent times.
Yeah.
It's an astonishing exercise. Did you conceive that?
That was an idea that a few of us thought might work, and it did. But it actually goes back to the 15th century. I mean, you can go back earlier than that, but in terms of dedicated rooms, I think 15th century.
It's a splendid idea. You don't really understand it unless you've seen it. But you know, you end up in a room with a 1930s or 40s telly or radio playing you contemporary bulletins and stuff like that. It's quite a journey.
Who here remembers David Jenkins, the rattling of the bell? There you are. Well, we have a David Jenkins room, and on the telly you can see what was that? The Spitting Images. You can see him looking unhappy, and Runcie looking even more unhappy.
We also see the original footage of him dancing around during the interview, trying to avoid a complete denial of the virgin birth, which is a fascinating snapshot. Anyway, having the castle, having its amazing grounds with the Prime Minister as gardener is one thing, and then beyond the gates is the wider project, the Auckland Project, because it doesn't stop at the splendid gatehouse, it goes beyond and into the community. How do you make that happen?
Well, if we'd been meeting 6 months ago, I always said that I made it up as I went along, and I really believed that. And we've opened a faith museum, which is I think unique in the Western world, to tell the story of the faith of a people, in this case the British Isles. And I had to make a speech to all the worthies who were gathered for it. And the night before, rather like Hezekiah, I found a letter that I had written, a copy of a letter I'd written to my senior trustee when I started, and he was getting at me for not bracing up and doing what he wanted. And I wrote to him and I said, Mark, I tell you what we're doing. And I had written in December 2012 exactly what we've done, which was to scrub up the palace, to build out the gardens, to put down on the low ground a night show which would be manned by volunteers to create new community in the town, and to bring about a Spanish gallery to contextualise the pictures that were in the castle. Now that in a nutshell is what we've done, and that in 3 sentences is what I said in my letter to Mark Jones. That's another name drop for those of you who are looking for that. In December 2012. So in fact, there was much more conscious action than I think I
Well, it's
myself credit
working.
for.
The Spanish gallery in town, next door to the very good restaurant, is flabbergasting. And as you walk round it, you look at paintings and you think, these really are world-class paintings here in a small town. And then you look at the label and you'll realise not only is the man to my right written the label that tells you the history, I'm sure with the assistance of conservators and experts, but at the bottom of it all it says this is owned by Jonathan Ruffer. It also says some of it's owned by the Trust as well. Some of the paintings are owned by the Trust as well.
Yeah.
You leave the gallery and you say, thank you very much indeed, to the guy on the door as you go out. And he says, oh, you've just missed Jonathan. All right. And I did yesterday on 2 occasions in the restaurant and in the gallery. You take a very hands-on approach to this. You're not sort of some airy-fairy remote character. You're in and out and about the place quite regularly.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, how human beings work. I love pictures, and the Spanish gallery is the apple of my eye. And everything I do there is a labour of love, whereas everything I do everywhere else is done because it needs to be done. Now the truth is, it's much easier to keep objective about the things that you have to do. If the cat needs deworming, you don't think much about whether you love the cat or not. You just go out and get it sorted. So all the things that we do, other than the Spanish gallery, are simply the workaday things that need doing to keep the show on the road. But when I see a great picture, which I think could be, just what we need in such and such a place, if it was like anything else, I would either get it or not get it, depending on whether I thought it was a worthwhile thing to do. But I feel frightfully guilty, and I think, gosh, is the Spanish gallery just a vanity project? So in fact, I think that it's been much easier for me not to be very interested in gardens, not to be very interested in architraves and new buildings and night shows down on the thing and what's going on in the Deer Park, because that means that one can do it in an orderly way.
You allow the viewer, me yesterday, to stand so close to works of art that are heading towards the priceless. I mean, I've never been that near to an El Greco. How long have you had the El Greco?
The El Greco was a bit of a fluke. Actually, the thing's full of flukes.
Wish my buying habits involved such flukes.
Let me give you an example. Christie's, they've closed South Kensington now, but if you wanted a hoity-toity picture, you go to the Christie's evening sale. If you want a decent picture, you go the following day to the day sale. And in those days, if you wanted to buy a Victorian pram or a ghastly sporting print of Florence's, you went to Christie's South Kensington. And every now and again, a moth-eaten picture would turn out there. Well, we found a Velázquez there. Now, there are only 120 of them known, and more than half of them are in the Prado. So there just aren't enough to go round. And this is by Velázquez. We put it in studio because it's a young picture, but there are a few coterie of experts, and they declared it right.
It is a collection, a staggering collection. Do you remember the first paint? Were the Zurbarans the first Spanish paintings you bought, or was that just linking into a passion you already had for Spanish art?
No, I already I was interested in Baroque pictures, which are 17th century pictures, and the Spanish Golden Age was a feature of the Baroque period. And I had a few French Baroque pictures, and the French are mad keen on elegance, so everything is full of floaty people in French Baroque. The Italians were absolutely dribbly about beauty. So everything that you find in Italian Baroque is beautiful. But in Spain, they were interested in truth. And so what that means is you have something very difficult and very powerful. What they were doing was they were very gaudy, and they kept trying to think gaudy thoughts, but wherever they looked, the Spanish Empire was in decline, terminal decline as it turned out. So wherever they looked, they saw transience. So it was this tension between thinking beautiful thoughts and seeing inadequacies all around them, which created a sort of anguish which expressed itself through art. And what I'm interested in is that people who don't like old pictures are, they don't necessarily come out thinking, gosh, I've enjoyed that, but they definitely come out thinking, that's been a real experience.
It
And
certainly
I can't
is
ask more than that.
It
from
certainly is a
the
real experience, Jonathan. It's astonishing. We're going to leave time for you to ask your questions. However, the tapestry. Tell me the tale of the tapestry and Henry VIII, please.
Right. I don't know whether at the back you can see my tie. I think it looks like I've been sick done. But it is in fact part of a tapestry from which Henry VIII commissioned in the 1530s. The story, he wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon, went to the Pope. The Pope wouldn't let him divorce her, so he sacked the Pope and declared himself the big cheese of the Church of England through the Act of Supremacy. So the Act of Supremacy was the birth of the Church of England. Now what he did was he decided on some propaganda, and he went to the greatest tapestry designer really that has ever lived, because this was the high watermark for tapestry, called Peter Cock van Elst, and he commissioned a tapestry that is vast. It's 20 foot long and 12 foot high, and it's made of gold braid, silver braid, silk, as well as wool. So this is an object of unsurpassed and unsurpassing importance and beauty and artistic value. And it was duly delivered, and it went to Hampton Court Palace, and then Charles II moved it to Windsor Castle. And it was in a 1770 inventory, and then it went missing, never seen again. And it turned up unrecognised in the provinces in England about 30 or 40 years ago, and it happened to be sold to somebody in Spain. And it went to one dealer, then another dealer, and then a private individual who said, gold braid, silver braid, silk, this looks rather important. And he put the question out, what have I got? And the doyen, good word, doyen of Tudor tapestry, who ran the Met in New York, Tom Campbell, he said, you have got the holy grail of Tudor tapestry, which is as I described. Whereupon the nice Spanish Ministry of Culture slapped an export ban. And so for 18 months, what I've been doing is raising money to pay for it, and persuading the Spanish that they should surrender this to me. And we had a crowd fund for the tapestry. In fact, some of you might have even what I wanted was 20 quid from anybody who gave, on the basis that a certificate of baptism, which is what I regard tapestry as, a certificate of baptism, if you have a child baptised in an Anglican church, costs you 18 quid. So I thought I'd charge another 2 quid postage and packing and get 20 quid. And we raised just over £1 million on that. And we've gone to the lottery fund, and although they haven't announced, the smoke signals are favourable, and now our 6-inch guns are turned on the Ministry of Culture. And I'm rather allergic to gongs, but one of the things I got given by the Spanish was I'm an encomienda de la Orden de Isabella la Católica, I think, or something. If you say it quietly enough, it sounds like a sermon. And so this is what I've been pleading to the Spanish, that I'm really one of yours. And so I'm hoping, where are we now? Halfway through June, they decide in 6 weeks' time, and they'll tell us by September. But that is a real shot in the arm for the North East, because these sorts of objects always go to the metropolitan museums. You know, if it's in Scotland, it'll go to Edinburgh. It'll go to the V&A, or the Historic Royal Palaces, or the British Museum. But we're bringing it to Auckland, into the Faith Museum, and the subject matter of it is Henry VIII burning the heathen books. Now, if that isn't a snappy subject, I don't know what is. But he was doing it cleverly, because what he was saying to the Pope was, look, the Roman Church is a Petrine church. It's based on the words of St. Peter. So I'm perfectly prepared to see you, Mr. Pope, as the reincarnation of St. Peter. But the Church of England was based on Pauline liturgy. And so I am the reincarnation of St. Paul. So if you come and look at my tie, and you can see past the dribble, you will see this is St. Paul standing. And what he's doing is organising the burning of the heathen books, a passage referring in Acts 9 to what he did in Ephesus. But Henry VIII had burnt Tyndale Bibles. Then he started burning the believers as well, which wasn't really quite the same on the side, really. But that's what he was claiming. He's saying, not only am I the representative of St. Paul, I behave like St. Paul as well. So let's just say other times, other sorts of people.
As we Spanish say, dedos cruzados, fingers crossed. We shall hope that this happens. I'll be in Spain in 6 weeks' time. I'll put in a word for you. There is one anecdote which, we'll move on to your questions in just a moment. There is one anecdote, and if you haven't been convinced already that Bishop Auckland is bizarrely a Spanish enclave in the northeast of England, this anecdote has to be told by the gentleman with us this afternoon about a dinner party. Could you regale us with that, please?
Oh, yes, another name drop alert. Yeah.
Get the vacuum cleaner out.
Michael Bloomberg, who's the chap who is a sort of computer whiz, used to hold very exclusive small dinner parties in New York, and he held a dinner party for the Queen of Spain. And as a sort of cabaret, he said to the guests when they arrived, will you tell the Queen what your favourite part of Spain is? And Jacob Rothschild said, my favourite part of Spain is a small part of the northeast of England. So wasn't that sweet of him?
So we have Bloomberg, Rothschild and the Queen of Spain.
Yes,
you ain't going to meet anybody today who's going to top that. At which point it's time to take your questions. Gentleman on the front row. Can you speak up, sir?
Yeah, well, yes, very interesting, thanks very much. My parents have been to Bishop Auckland, I know about Sun River Weir, and it would have given it a real good boost, you know. And I presume the castle's out now open to the public. I think it has been open to the public before. It's got a deer park. You can go wander around it, can't you?
you can indeed, yeah.
And nearby there's a very old church.
Escombe, must be Escombe.
Yeah. That's very, yes, that's very. I think it's the only Saxon church. Is it? I can't remember. I've been.
Yes, it's very early, and we've got on our site a Roman fort called Vinovium.
Yeah.
And if you go to Escombe Church, you find odd bits of it have got bits in Latin because they pinched the stones
you know, it's an interesting area around there actually. I had a couple of heart actually, the Yuff and part. I'll just say this very quickly. I think you see her. They still speak Norwegian because lots of them, you know, the Viking. They still speak Norwegian. They're fishermen, do I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe that. What sparked your interest in art, and why 17th century Spanish art in particular?
What sparked your interest in art?
The reason for 17th century was simply if you aim at nothing in particular, you're bound to hit it. So that was chosen largely at random. But I've always had something that I'm actually more ashamed of than pleased with myself for, which is a strong collecting habit. And I used to collect old operatic gramophone records, 78s, which break when you drop them. And their saving grace is, however bad they are, they're over in 3 minutes. And for whatever reason, I stopped collecting those. So I was a collector with nothing to collect, and I bumped into the wrong person, and that's how the arts.
Are you a hoarder, really? Are you a hoarder? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not a hoarder, I'm a collector.
Question over here.
Amazing to hear what you've done. I have huge respect. You mentioned that you don't know how much you've put into the project. Is the plan for it to become financially self-sustaining?
It's a very good
I'll
question.
just repeat the question. Is it going to become financially self-sustaining?
The answer is it needs nearly to become so. At the moment, it is fantastically loss-making, because what we have is we have effectively a full-scale visitor attraction and very few visitors. I mean, if we get 150 or 200,000, then the losses will be much smaller. I mean, given that we are engaged in being there for the town, it's not run anyway for profitability. But the other side, down on the weir, where we've got the night show, we're building at the moment a day park, and that Kinran is the name of the night show, and that's one of the TripAdvisor's top 5 must go to in the country, and I really would commend that to you, because it is staggering. Now the day park will be a day version of that, and we will be the first day park pretty much in the world to be doing it on an immersive basis. Now that could well be enormously profitable.
Can I just ask you at this point, it was on my list of things to ask you, there will be people here who've been to Kinrin later on.
Hands up if you've been to Kinrin.
Yeah, quite a lot of people. For those who haven't,
lie through your teeth, say it's brilliant. All right.
For those who haven't and who don't know what Kinrin is, can you just explain, please, Jonathan?
Have a word with your neighbour. But I mean, to me, the exciting thing about Kinrin is that the insight is that if you create a cadre of people who are slipping about in the mud from February to practice and make perfect what they're doing, and you're using, top, best of breed choreography, music, all the things, all the ingredients that go lighting that go to make it up, then you create something amazingly powerful. But what the key to places thriving is partly the economy, but it's partly having communities. And when I look at Kinran and what that's done, that is the only thing that I really feel we've got that off the meat of the bat, because grandmothers, parents, and children all come and all act in it together.
Anybody that I've asked about it goes, the horses, the scale of it, the drama of it.
Yeah.
Question at the back.
Yes, apart from trying to acquire the tapestry and the development of the immersive park, what are your other future plans for Bishop Auckland and the Palace?
Well, the one I'm rather happy about at the moment is that you have at York Constantine College, and the reason is that Constantine was crowned emperor in York. Now, we know that he fought on Hadrian's Wall, and what we have at Vinovium, where we are, is the forward holding place for reinforcements and new troops to go and fight on Hadrian's Wall. So the chances of Constantine not having been at Venedium, he would have lived there for months on end. But all my curators say there's no literary evidence that he was ever there. So you can't say that Constantine is part of the Venedium story. So what we're doing is we're building a statue of Constantine, which is based on the Vatican have a museum called the Capitoline Museum, and those of you who've been to it will know that there are fragments of the statue, and Constantine's head. Constantine's head is 11 feet high. So this statue is going to be 43 feet high. And when people say, why is it there? I shall say, I can't quite remember.
Another question at the back, sir.
Yeah, excuse me, could you say a bit more about the Pittman painters and also your wider contribution to the regeneration of Bishop Auckland?
Yes, question is the Pittman papers. We have our painters. We have another art gallery which is built around the art of coal miners. And it was really the first gallery that was opened. And it is terrifically powerful. One of the things that is very striking all around the world is that if you look at heavy industry, if you look at the chemical industry, look at shipbuilding, none of them produced art. But it looks as though the business of working as a troglodyte underground grieves the spirit of who people are, so that when they come out, they have things that are inexpressible, that need expression. And the art that has been produced by the local northeastern coal miners is captured in this small gallery. And this is of intense importance, particularly at this stage. It's 40 years since the mines closed, so there are plenty of miners still alive, but they're now old men. But in a generation, it will be something entirely of the past. But the Miners' Art Gallery is a living, vibrant experience, so that in one sense it couldn't be more different from the Spanish Gallery, but in another, it's the expression of the will and the spirit fighting against adversity, and it's a wonderfully powerful thing.
One final brief question from a gentleman down here, because we have to vacate the room in a minute, or Joan will be after me.
Can you tell us about your involvement with the Weardale Railway and what your plans are for it?
The Weardale Railway.
The Weardale Railway is, I'm going to be quite quick on that because I want to answer the other question of the regeneration side. It's the extension of the railway from Darlington to Bishop Auckland. It's 19 miles. And next year, the Darlington and Stockton Railway is going to have its 200th anniversary of the first passenger train. But that railway actually started as a freight line taking coal from Witten Park through to Darlington. And the first 5 miles of it from Witten Park to Bishop Auckland, which is really part of the Darlington and Stockton line, because the coal was going from Witten Park to the port at Stockton. That is going to be celebrating the 200th anniversary. And it was in difficulties when we got it, and it still isn't squeaky clean. But my feeling was to let that resource die, which is what I think would otherwise have happened. Just didn't seem on. So that's why we did it. That's what we're doing. But the question of how, in all these things we've talked about, how does this help town? And I would answer this by saying that Bishop Auckland is a hub. Although it's only 25,000 people, it's a natural congregation, and it's got 3 secondary schools and a further college of education. And if you look at people who find life hard because they haven't got a job, it affects their health, it affects their income, and the best way of people finding employment is to stay in education. So the thing that is central around what we do is to make all these different experiences, and particularly the art experience, because art is bigger than yourself, and it's things that are bigger than yourself that transform people. That this is the central plank of how we are trying to be servants of the town and the region. So that's the answer to the second part.
And I think, Jonathan, that is where we must leave it. Ladies and gentlemen, can I urge you, get your hands on one of these. This is the entry card that will get you 12 months entry into all the great things that we've been talking about today in Bishop Auckland, into the castle, into the Faith Museum, the Mining Museum, the Spanish Gallery. It won't buy you your lunch in El Castillo, but honestly, it's the best tapas I've eaten, and that includes a lot of tapas in Spain. I do urge you to go. It's an extraordinary experience, and it just leaves me to say thank you to our remarkable guest today, one of the greatest do-gooders in Britain, who's transforming and regenerating a small town in the north. I think what we've been talking about today is true levelling up. Jonathan Ruffer, thank you very much.